What's up, everybody? Thralls Monday here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick.
I'm Jammin John.
And we have an album review for you. And, well, kind of with, Godzilla coming out in theaters this weekend, we wanted to go over something else very heavy and very Japanese. So we are going over the latest offering from Coffins, Sinister Oath. This comes out on the 29th of March on RIFFS Records. This band formed in 1996 in Tokyo, Japan. This is their sixth full-length album. Not a lot of full lengths, but they made up for it with like 25 splits. Back in the early days of Thralls, we reviewed their last album, Beyond the Circular Demise. I believe that might have been with the Tommy. That's how far back that one goes. Back before, again, we knew anything about talking into a camera, lighting, editing, really anything.
Yeah, anything too much. I wouldn't watch the early days. I don't recommend that. In fact, when people ask and they say, how long have you guys been a channel? And I tell them 5 years. Really, I should start telling them 3 years so they don't dig back that far.
Don't go back that far. We don't know those people. They're totally different people. That's AI. It's AI.
Those are our stand-in doubles. Our AI stand-in doubles.
And for those that don't know about Coffins, this is just some absolutely filthy, disgusting death doom. This band worships at the altar of autopsy, and I totally get it because I kind of worship at that altar too.
Fair enough.
If I had to guess, I would say these guys probably jammed Mental Funeral once and then 5 minutes later formed a band. That's how much this sounds like autopsy, but even sonically, possibly even heavier. This band loves just the most oversaturated, grimy, filthy guitar tones, and you get that right away with the intro track BTCD. I don't know what that stands for, but man, riffs. Jesus, this tone is designed pretty much only to riff. You can't really do much technical with this because it's just going to turn into mud, but when you riff on it, it is the heaviest thing. There's so much sizzle on the guitar. It sounds like someone deep frying a tire.
Yeah, BTCD, right off the bat, it reminded me of the self-titled Crowbar album, as far as the guitar tone was concerned and just the big, chunky, meaty riffs. And really, that continues throughout the entire record. The next song, Spontaneous Rot, just immediate, slow, and groovy, almost sludgy goodness.
Across the board, I would say, and this isn't like a slight against Coffins at all, this album sounds like a Coffins album. Mm-hmm. They have kind of one sound, and they do it exceedingly well. And that's kind of the thing that I love about them, because I know what I'm going to get every time. Every time I get a new Coffins album, it is legit probably the heaviest thing that comes out at least that week. And while I like this band's straight up old school death metal sound and their like a little bit more fast numbers like Things Infestation, which actually features a guest appearance from Massacre's Cam Lee, or Headless Monarch, I love it when this band slows down to a crawl and just lets things drone.
Yeah, the title track. Slow, heavy, evil, almost funeral doom. It's slower than cement drying, but just as heavy as the final result. This band isn't real heavy on accents, but what they do use to accent the beginning of, say, a bunch of chairs falling on you would be just a single open hi-hat, just... And like, immediately I thought, man, that's a little loud, but it makes sense as the record goes on.
The opening for the title track is like a dinner bell for demons. It kind of just lures you in. Monotonous, slow chugging. The song is just brooding, and even as it builds, it feels like it just kind of maintains this just oppressive, bleak sound. And in terms of like lead melodies on here, man, all right, the leads on here are strange, but they're always kind of strange. Like, kind of atonal, like the note choices are odd.
Sounds like they're out of tune. It sounds like a 12-year-old picked up a guitar and was like, dude, check this out. There's dive bombs and squeals, but none of it sounds remotely pleasing to the ear.
No.
Yet it works for this.
Oh, it totally works for this. Like, it just kind of adds an extra layer of dreariness to the sound, because, I mean, overall, like, the sonic heft of this album, and by extent, all Coffins albums, is the thing that just kind of drives it. Like, these albums always sound heavier than everything. And in terms of melody, like, there generally isn't a lot. Like, a lot of the riffs are simple, chuggy patterns or just heavy drones, but the lead melodies mixed with the just cavernous, horrific, demonic sounding vocals, it creates this just sort of air of like unsettling, sinister. Actually, sinister is a great word for it. It kind of creates that mood. And it's weird, like as the leads go on, like you'll get moments where like, okay, now that, sort of ascending pattern makes sense, but then it descends in like an odder pattern and then goes into like dive bombs and dissonant strumming. It all kind of helps create this just absolutely foul, murky mood on here.
As if you weren't really latching on to, say, I don't know, Autopsy vibes, the song Everlasting Spiral is about as heavy and as gnarly as it gets. But much like Autopsy with their shifts from doom into madness, Everlasting Spiral is a good example of that. It is a 9-minute long track, and the first 6.5 minutes, yes, the first 6.5 minutes, are nothing but the gnarliest, stankiest faced doom moments ever. Like, it is heavier than shit. But after those 6.5 minutes, it speeds up. And it turns into, like, punk and almost grind at times. And that's Autopsy if I ever heard Autopsy.
Yeah, that just jarring shift. But here's the interesting thing. I thought it was an instrumental because, again, we were at 6.5 minutes and there were no vocals. I don't even think there was like a big cavernous growl or anything in there.
No nothing.
And then all of a sudden, as soon as it changes its mood and gets like violent, which I'm pretty sure that'll catch the people in the pit completely off guard. Unless they've heard this one. But, I mean, if you're familiar with Coffins, yeah, they've done this before. But the fact that there weren't any vocals until like the last 2.5 minutes of it, I thought was just sort of like an interesting little wrinkle. And, interesting little wrinkles in terms of their sound are things I think they kind of have to do because this is very straightforward and very meat and potatoes. Yeah. But what they do with, the minimal ingredients in here, I think are really cool.
Much like in Domains of Black Miasma, the last track, right before it gets heavy enough to rip your face off, there's an isolated bass moment, and that's really the only time that happens. And it's weird because it's a warm bass tone, but it sounds horribly unnerving.
The beginning of Everlasting Spiral also builds in layers as well. You get the isolated riff, instantly stankifies your face. The bass comes in behind it, and then the drums, and when it all comes together, yeah, your face will kind of freeze like that for at least like the first 6.5 minutes of that song.
It was just straight.
Yeah, it's just gross. But you do get some like faster moments in here that pack a different kind of intensity. They're a little bit more aggro, like Forced Disorder. Definitely some thrash metal riffs on there, and there's like a really cool kind of off-time, almost hardcore-ish breakdown on there. And then the song Chain is kind of a straightforward, just punky D-beat number. Like straight up, just kind of like a midnight vibe, albeit being played by like incantation. Outside of the intro, it's the shortest track on there, and it just feels a little bit more, I don't know if like lighthearted is the word for it. It still feels greasy and grimy, but it's kind of got that punky fun to it.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can definitely tell they were having fun because of the weird vocals in the end of it. I thought it was comparable to RoboCop throwing up.
I thought it sounded like, Jabba the Hutt, which immediately I checked the lyrics. I was like, okay, if there's like a reference to him pulling Leia on the chain, and that's the chain,
yeah,
I totally get it. I would have pulled that chain a lot too. Headless Monarch has some like really cool galloping drum patterns, which you don't really hear a lot of that. A lot of this is double time, D beat, kind of a faster blast, and then again the slowest, doomiest stuff you'll hear until you decide to listen to an Autopsy album or another Coffins album. And the last track, Domains of Black Miasma in particular, I like, that has another kind of like two-piece sound. It starts off like a zombified version of Bolt Thrower, like all double-time grooves, heavy, aggressive tremolos on there with some like good little transitions in there to kind of break it up like on a chorus hook-ish. Like it's got some like legit catchy riffs on it. But then you get that isolated bass, and at this point, you know what anything isolated means. It means the next thing is going to be probably slower and murkier and darker, and you bet your ass it is. Because that song literally just decides to fade out and just build on this disgusting, gross riff at the end.
Yeah, the breakdown will break your legs. That's the intention. I don't think they thought anything else. I don't think they thought like, all right, here's just a normal breakdown. No, this is trip to the hospital. You're done. It's over.
It lumbers and crawls and kind of just destroys everything in its path, kind of like Godzilla. I'm going to make another Godzilla reference just because Godzilla.
And although we didn't really talk about production much, I mean, from the description of a record like this, it's exactly what you think it is. Big, meaty drums. They actually have a real natural sound to them, and everything just kind of thwacks. Like, that kick almost has a wet punch to it, and the snare drum just sounds straight like old school snare drum. Like, I don't know how else to describe it. It just sounds like it was recorded on like a 4-track.
Yeah.
Like one of those. There's no effects on it. There's no nothing. It's really simple. Yeah, the guitars are just big and meaty and chunky. A little bit of crunch on them at times. The bass is really just kind of there. It's warm. It's simple, but it's effective.
Man, when the isolated that thing sizzles, man, it's like someone boiling a pot of eggs. Like, it's just this gross sound. But I love how this sounds because guaranteed this is exactly what you get live.
Yeah.
And I love production like that, and all the levels are really good in here. In terms of any negatives on here, well, I mean, there's a couple, but they're really not that huge. My biggest issue was chain, and not only does it sit between arguably two of the best tracks on here, it just feels like kind of a punky Coffins song, kind of by the numbers. Like, I'm pretty sure that song in some form or another is on every Coffins album. It's not bad, it's just kind of there. And the weird goofy vocal change in there, I don't know. Like, it just sounds kind of odd.
That's my only gripe as well. Just, I thought that some songs just didn't hit as hard as others. Songs like Force Disorder or Chain or Things Infestation. I think my thing with that is that, like, when they go faster, when they're in these like punky two-step moments, like, they're still cool, but this band really hits the hardest when they're slow.
Yes.
When they are slow and doomy, or they are just laboring on like a halftime groove, like, that's when this band hits the hardest. So it's not that I thought those songs were necessarily bad, I just didn't like them as much as I liked the heavier, slower moments.
Yeah, and with the guitar tone being as heavy and disgusting as it is, it really does lend itself to the slower, droning, even like slow chugging riffs.
Yeah.
When it comes down like the faster plays, some of the riffs and melodies get to be a little bit indistinct. But overall, I enjoyed this, much like I enjoy pretty much all of Coffins' discography. They are grossly consistent and grossly gross. And for that reason, I'm going to give this 4 stars because this delivers on everything I would want from a Coffins album. Outside of one kind of so-so number, which isn't necessarily bad, it's just kind of sandwiched between, again, 2 absolutely amazing tracks. This is just an awesome Coffins album. I love the guitar tone once again. The vocals are just ridiculously evil sounding. This is built on groove, riffs, and being heavier than everything else, at least that they know of. It is very transparent about its worship of Autopsy, but I don't care. Worship that band. I think a lot of bands should worship Autopsy. In a perfect world, a ton of bands would worship Autopsy. Taylor Swift would worship Autopsy, but we're not in that universe because she's out doing whatever the hell she's doing right now.
Wow.
Yeah.
That would be a record.
And by default, she would worship Coffins. This is just, again, fantastic. Like, if you're a big fan, again, of Autopsy, again, Crowbar is kind of a comparison on here.
I'm telling you.
Especially in some of the, like, more, like, kind of halftime grooves and riffs. And, of course, you know, bands like Incantation, Hooded Menace, Mortiferum. If you love your death metal primal, ugly, slow and murky, and your deathdoom breakdowns heavier than everything else, just go ahead and get this, and go ahead and get the rest of Coffins' discography because it's awesome.
Yeah, I'm going to give this a big old 4 stars myself. I have to really pretty much agree with Nick as far as this record being heavier than everything else. Quite possibly the heaviest record this year, and I realize we've said that a couple times this year, but this is pretty gosh darn heavy. If you like your taters to be potatoey and your meat to be meaty, this is that. There's not really anything overly complex going on here, but these guys know how to write heavy riffs and just labor on that. I like the fact that they don't really ever deviate from a main riff pattern. They just take it and play with the tempo a little bit. And when it's slow, it is slow. It definitely worships at the autopsy altar. There's no denying that whatsoever.
Japan definitely has some awesome autopsy worship bands. One I forgot was Anatomia. And Anatomia, your move. Coffins came out with a new album. It's your turn. I want to hear what you do. It'll probably sound like Autopsy. I'm cool with that.
Yeah. You know, this band has 3 speeds. Punk/grind, heavy, and then doom heavy. I love that about metal. I like slow, chunky, groovy riffs. And this band is full of it. Songs like Sinister Oath and Everlasting Spiral, man, that's going to pound in any speaker system you have and just get ready to break your neck. But not at the speed of light, at the speed of drying rubber cement. Although there were a couple songs that didn't hit as hard for me, it's still a killer record from start to finish. Again, very groovy, very simple, very heavy. The slower moments are where this band really shines, because when they slow down, it's just simply pummeling. If you're an Autopsy fan or an Incantation fan, and I'm telling you, early Crowbar, I'm telling you, you'll hear it. You'll hear it right off the bat. If you're a fan of any of that, chances are you're really going to like this. Go check it out, like it, love it, bang your head. That was the intention.
So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up. And if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down below to thrallsmetal.com. Our Patreon link is there. It is also on our channel up in the banner in the bottom right-hand corner. But if you are looking for Thralls Metal stuff, you have to go to thrallsmetal.com. We have new shirts. We have old shirts that are discounted, provided we have your size. We even have hats, too. So if you're looking for any of that stuff, click the link down below.
And as always, tons of stuff going on at Thralls of Metal, whether it be album reviews or states of metal or collection updates or Nick's new popular series, Heavy But Not Metal? Or is it? You don't know. Anyway, tons of things going on. I finally moved into a new apartment. I'm going to unveil my office soon. I'm super stoked about that, which means Jammin John can get back to work on whatever the hell he's got going on. It'll be a lot. Next discography ranking up is Meshuggah. That's going to rule. We keep stuff going here at Thralls of Metal all the time, and it's because of you guys. Each and every one of you that still tunes in and talks to us and pays attention, and I don't get it. We say it all the time, you could do better, but we're glad you don't. Both of us, all of us here really at Thralls of Metal are super, super glad that you guys stick around. We thank you from the bottom of our blackened little hearts.
Yeah, you guys absolutely rule and keep us going. And again, we have a ton of stuff planned for you. So one more big thank you, because you're awesome.
Thank you.
And we will catch you later.